Right, so sacrificing for sustainable peace. Now, what does that mean? It means letting go of some personal comforts, whether emotional or material or otherwise, and for the greater good of peace and harmony.
Not sure you would have captured it better, because peace isn't just the absence of conflict. It takes real effort, commitment, and sometimes difficult choices. Think about it. Without selflessness, empathy, or forgiveness, can peace really, really last?
Well, that's the big question, Victor. And speaking of selflessness, Ramadan reminds us again of the power of sacrifice, not just in fasting, but also in doing the deeds of kindness, given to those in need and fostering understanding.
Absolutely. Whether it's personal sacrifices, emotional ones, or even material contributions, like donating to a cause, every act of sacrifice plays a role in building sustainable peace.
And while sacrifice brings benefits, of course, as we've mentioned, including stronger relationships and long-term stability, it also has its challenges: burnout, societal expectations, and sometimes also the unfair burden placed on certain groups.
True. But when sacrifice is done with sincerity, it can break barriers, foster unity across religious and cultural lines, and drive real change. Just like we see during Ramadan, when communities come together to support one another.
And also, not just in Ramadan, also even other faiths do, share that belief. But that's exactly what we will be discussing this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. How does sacrifice shape peace and coexistence, with real stories, of course, and insights to inspire us?
So we urge you to stay with us. We're live on the network service of the NTA, and Chukwudi Obaja will join us in a moment for the newspaper review.
All right, welcome to the program. It's Good Morning Nigeria, and we're glad you're able to join us this morning. Of course, being a holiday. Coming up next will be the newspaper review.
All right, thank you for staying with us, and I'm happy to introduce Chukwudi Obaja, who joins us for the newspaper review. Good
Victor,
morning, Chukwudi.
I like to be heralded in happiness. It opens up a great day for me.
You look
Laughter
different.
is everything.
You look different without a cap.
I forgot the cap, but I don't think I regret it much, if you're not going to give me any sanctions, because I truly look like Chuckster Boy this morning. Claire,
Yes.
are you bamboozled?
No, I'm not.
By my ego?
It's just that.
Morning.
It's just that I forgot to say Baraka de Salah.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
we did that yesterday.
My first, yes,
And we talked about the community life.
Yes.
Our Muslim brothers and sisters exuded.
Yes, and they say the belated wishes.
Yes.
Are mostly cherished.
My belated wishes.
Yes, they're mostly cherished.
Yes.
Well, let's begin the review. And I'll start with the Daily Times, which leads with BBC faces funding challenge as real income drops by £1 billion. I guess the Daily Times is trying to tell us something here. And below the picture stories, of course, the picture stories talk about children enjoying the Eid holiday. And after that, you have LP to use Anambra Guba election test to test victory in 2027. That's according to its national chairman, Abure. Osun communal crisis. Adeleke threatens royal fathers with dethronement. You can get details of that story on page 9. And Tinubu extends tenure of immigration boss till 2026. That is on page 26. And just above the nameplate, oddity, Families resort to buying sons Android phones to join Yahoo Boys business. Families resort to buying sons Android phones to join Yahoo business. Okay? That's on page 2. And 2 die, 20 injured. 2 die, 20 injured in Gombe Eid al-Fitr prayer ground stampede. That's on page 5. So let's take a look at the Daily Trust now. The Daily Trust lead story reads, Uromi killings, Edo governor visits victims' families. That's as hunters insist on justice. The story is on pages 3 and 4. And above that story, just below the nameplate, Immigration CG gets tenure extension. Police rescue 21 kidnapped victims is on page 25. And couple, 4 others die in Abuja Lokoja road crash. That's on page 16. At the bottom of the Daily Trust, front page of the Daily Trust, AFCON 2025, inside Golden Eaglet's declining fortunes. Golden Eaglets? Okay, page 31. A mob beats suspected burglar to death is on page 16. And finally, PRP in spotlight as defectors rekindle debate on relevance. That's on page 11. Claire.
All right, thank you. Now, let's quickly look at the blueprint. And the blueprint leads with Kebbi, Gombe, Katsina, top as meningitis cases spread, 74 killed, and it comes with 2 riders there. And amid environmental concerns, NTA plans review of $6.03 billion investment by IOCs. And there are other stories trending at the bottom of the paper. Troop arrest 39 oil thieves, dismantle 18 bunkering sites in the Niger Delta. And the other stories there, we see the Minister of Interior, Olubunmi Tunji Ojo, of course, in a warm handshake with the UK Home Secretary at the Border Security Summit in Lancaster House, London, on Monday. And then I'd just like to point out the of course, the cartoon just by the right-hand column there, and it says Trump hints on running for 3rd term in 2028, and the other parrot, of course, responds he should consult OBJ first. All right, Chukwudi.
Did OBJ tell you he was going for 3rd term? Huh? Oh, now we be journalists. Now so now they cause trouble. Anyhow, the thing to pick up from there is let African leaders not tell us tomorrow that tenure elongation is not unspeakable, an evil thing to think about. After all, America of all places. Now that one go learn. Even though the 22nd Amendment is going to bar Trump, he's going to know the power of a constitution when the time comes. It's not just going to be a Congress then. The states will all have to sign up to his extension. People are saying somebody could make him the vice president, and then the vice president would either...
No, but
I hope
but
it doesn't die.
I record the law also says if you can't be president, you can't be vice president.
So let's call that one of those
yes.
Trump asides.
I
Let
think
him concentrate on civil
yeah.
governance, not governance by chaos.
It was actually asked by a journalist. They were interviewing him. And there's been a lot of talk. And some people say, well, how can a journalist ask that kind of question knowing the illegality of it?
Yes.
I said journalists could ask, perhaps because they see, they sense...
I can't remember whether it's a CBS interview or his favorite Fox News interview.
Well,
because he could tell a journalist the questions to ask you
Of
there.
course.
No, this
Well,
was actually
he said,
in flight.
He said,
An Air Force
excuse, yes, he said there are many ways
Oh, sure.
to do it. But you see, again, what we should learn is that democracy may be evolving in the US backwards.
It's a matter of opinion. Actually, if a man, we're talking about this third term thing now. If an incumbent actually convinces the people and he gets the vote of the people to change the constitution, that is the people's choice. What you want as a journalist, what you want as somebody who believes in constitutional rigidity, blah, 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 would not matter in that case. So at the end of the day, it is what do the people want and not what loquacious leaders want.
Indeed.
Yes.
Parents resorting to buying Android phones for their kids to join the Yahoo business. It's on Daily Times.
Who conducted the survey? Is my family one of
I
those
saw the
families?
picture of the EFCC chair there,
You know.
and so you wonder if it came from the EFCC chair.
My dear brother, I was just being mischievous. Otherwise, there's a drop in values in our society. It's everything, every facet of our life. It's not just in our politics. The other time I was talking about the clout of the Nigerian senator in 1999. I'm not saying it to denigrate the current senators. I know their stature then, Ogunlewes, the Mike Ajebos, and the rest of them. Then you go to our newsroom so that politicians do not think that this loud mouth has come again. Go and check what's happening in our newsroom. The other day I was praising NTA for still being the believable all-rounder broadcaster. It is here you still hear cerebrospinal meningitis discussed for 1 hour. Over there is activist interviews about nothing but politics. There's no gardening, nothing about books. There's a drop generally in the way we look at lives and the way we apply ourselves to the environment. Society has to recline and say, where are we going? Are we living a life that leads to rounded human beings? That's the point.
The other story I'd just like you to speak on is
The family
on
unit collapsed anyway.
On the border security summit. You
I've not seen Olumide for some time.
Yes,
I used to.
you know where he is now.
Yes.
At the border, security summit. And
Yes.
It's like everyone is now, waking up to the issue of border security, and I think that border security matters here in our country, especially with the porosity of,
Border security has always mattered, but then Africa has peculiar problems. People will tell you border security matters. If you just cross the border, you see that my way they see for the now my cousin. Africa has those problems, so border security is going to continue to be a problem.
And by the way,
but as much as I may not be Trump's fan, Trump has actually started the issue of border security. We need to tackle it. Let's not say because Trump is this, Trump is that. That issue has to be handled. Border security has become something that is important to any nation.
You know why it will be difficult for Africans, to implement border security, strictly. It's because of our interconnectedness.
That's what I said.
Exactly.
That my way they see across my brother.
Precisely. So, and of course, when the colonialists came, the structure of our, existence, cohabitation was altered. But regardless, you still find, like you said, you go to Seme, before you know it, you go to Koto, before you know it, you're in Nigeria and all that. So it will be difficult, again, given the protocol, ECOWAS protocol, which allows for free movement. So it will also be difficult to begin to implement strictly, border security.
But you're thinking like Trump when you think that border security is about raising walls and all that. Border security can still happen if you have enough checkpoints, if you have enough arrangements on the ground that sieves the kind of people coming into your country. Border security does not mean an open door to brazen criminality. It doesn't mean that.
Not like when you talk about enough checkpoints and all of that, I'm sure you're not referring to Nigeria's vast borders that are largely unmanned.
Don't make Nigerian case unmanageable or impossible. It is not. It is still
But by the way,
the
the extension of tenure for the Controller General of Immigration was hinged on the renewed push to better police the borders.
The borders.
Of course, using electronic gadgets to police the borders. Well,
and so extending the tenure is going to ensure
allow
that.
you complete the task. Well, you want to think
I'm wondering the logical connection.
I'll just say what I say to Nigerian.
I'm just saying that's what it's hinged on.
I'll just say what I say to Nigerian leaders who want to go on and on. A leader, even Paul Kagame, as much as he has done in Rwanda, a leader that cannot raise a successor after 8 years is a failure. He's a greedy man or a greedy woman. Forget it.
All right.
Chukwudi, thank you very much.
Bless you.
And the holiday ends today, so tomorrow.
There's no holiday for me.
There hasn't been any for you. All right. Sorry about that.
It's okay. It's okay.
Did you get the zakat? Did anybody bring the zakat? Zakat fitri.
I just enjoy the community life I saw among Muslims in on my axis. It was, oh look.
All right. Chukwudi, have a good day. We'll see
Thank you so much.
Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
All right, this is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. To begin our conversation with borders on sacrificing for sustainable peace, here's a background report put together by our correspondent, Timothy Yusuf.
Sacrificing for sustainable peace in Nigeria requires a collective effort from individuals, communities, and leaders. Consequently, experts have recommended some ways to sacrifice for sustainable peace. They are tolerance and understanding, forgiveness, volunteering, and self-reflection. Many also believe that community service, interfaith dialogue, conflict resolution mechanism, as well as education and awareness could go a long way to fostering sustainable peace. The call on all to recommit to sacrificing for sustainable peace is an imperative by all, as those who know believe that it is possible to promote peaceful coexistence and build a more harmonious society. Stay with us as our array of discussants throw more light on sacrificing for sustainable peace on Good Morning Nigeria.
Timothy Yusuf, thank you very much for the background report. And to discuss sacrificing for sustainable peace, let me quickly introduce our guests right here in the studio. Ustaz Abubakar Sadiq Mohammed is an Islamic scholar and member management board of the National Mosque. He's also a private Hajj operator. He joins us live. Barakadi Salah, Ustaz.
Thank you very much for having me.
We also have here with us Reverend John Joseph Hayab, Chairman Christian Association of Nigeria, CAN, Northern Chapter. He's also Country Director, Global Peace Foundation, Nigeria. Reverend, thank you very much, as always, for joining us.
Thank you too for having me, and Barka de Salah to my dear brother.
Thank you.
The others.
Thank you, Claire. We have also been joined right here in the studio by Dr. Joseph Ochogu, Director General, Institute of Peace and Conflict Resolution. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good morning, Nigerians, and Barka de Salah.
And from our Kanu studio, I'd like to welcome Dr. Saleh Momale, former Executive Vice Chairman, Kaduna State Peace Commission. It's good to see you again. Barka de Salah, and welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all Nigerians.
All right. I'd like to start our conversation, gentlemen, with some clarifications, because I know that the two main religion, of course, propagate sacrifice. It's a central theme that runs through. Even in traditional African literature, sacrifice is also central to it. But sometimes, the ordinary people confuse what sacrifice means. Sometimes we take it to the extreme, of doing that. So I just like for us to quickly, do some clarifications and let us understand it, both from the spiritual point of view and also from the academic point of view. Let me start with Dr. Joseph Ochogu.
Thank you very much. I think sacrifice is part and parcel of human society, and any human being, where you find human beings, there are sacrifices. But it is important that we try to contextualize what sacrifice really is, When we are gathered here and talking about sacrifice, the sacrifice we are talking about, both from the Islamic point of view or the Christian point of view, is sacrifice for the good of humanity. Sacrifice for common existence, sacrifice for the development, of human beings as well as their society. So that is the kind of sacrifice which is the positive sacrifice we're talking about. There is also the negative sacrifice, which has to do with rituals, which has to do with murder. You don't do sacrifice to kill your neighbor, in the sense you're trying to do sacrifice with human rituals. That is condemnable, it's abominable, it's not acceptable, in human society. So we need to separate it so we understand exactly what we're talking about. So the sacrifice we're talking about here is sacrifice for the good of man and good of humanity and good of society. It's a forward-thinking, progressive sacrifice. At individual level, when you do it, you feel it. Because one, it detoxifies you, it prepares you, for a divine connection, with your creator, your being. And that is why at the time of like the Ramadan and the Lent period, that we have, you find piety, you find piousness, you find people tuned, their countenance itself changes, within that period of time. They are making self-sacrifice, in terms of fasting, to being tuned, with their creator and being loved with their community and their people. So that is the kind of sacrifice we focus on, and that is the kind of sacrifice that we need, for Nigeria in terms of national development, in terms of human development, for our society to move forward.
Okay. I know you have distinguished between the good sacrifice and the bad sacrifice. The good sacrifice within the context of our conversation is the sacrifice that aims at the common good and for the good of the general, populace. Again, you don't sacrifice your neighbor. So let me bring the conversation. Before I come to the two clerics here, let's bring in our, former Executive Vice Chairman, Kaduna State Peace Commission, that's Dr. Salim Omali. Dr. Salim Omali, what's your understanding of the concept of sacrifice?
Thank you very much to the Nigerian Television Authority once again for always initiating important discourse that is essential to organizing our Nigerian society, and especially our young populations that always listen and need this kind of information and guidance at all times. I think, like Dr. Joseph just mentioned, there is the individual, that is myself or yourself or any other self, and then the generality of people. So every person has his own specific needs and what he wants, or he has what he owns or what he has, or what he desires. Then you find out that at the same time, the larger society also have what it needs or what it wants. And therefore, there is always a conflict in terms of needs between the individual and the larger society, or a convergence of needs between the individual and the larger society. So whenever somebody acts in a way where he leaves his own comfort, or he takes something which he owns, or he takes something which he desires, and make it available for the good or for the generality of the people to benefit from, that is, in my understanding, part of what sacrifice is. And I will give an example. The NTA today, all of you are sacrificing your valuable time to your families, to your rest, during these holidays when every other civil servant or any other worker is there with his family and enjoying, and then others, like those in the broadcast industry, those in the security services, those in many other aspects of human endeavor, the medical practitioners, they leave this comfort and they come to the hospitals, they come to the studios, they go to the security offices, they maintain law and order. They are sacrificing their own personal need and desires for the good of the generality of the society. Wherever we have a considerable population of the citizens of a country willing and passionately sacrificing their own priorities for the priorities or the needs of the general society, you find that society being peaceful, being progressive, being harmonious. So this is a very important aspect that we need every young Nigerian to inculcate and become a person that is always willing to sacrifice for the generality of all Nigerians.
Momale, thank you very much for your intervention. Let's bring in Reverend Hayab. Perhaps you want to come from the religious perspective, what it means to sacrifice, and then situate it in society, what that could mean for society.
When Jesus says, greater love has no man than this, than for one to lay down his life for his brother, he's talking about sacrifice. And sacrifice from the context of this conversation is that which you remove selfishness, you remove self, you remove your entitlement, you remove what you think is supposed to be your right, but you think for the general good of others, you think for the larger peace and the larger joy, the larger gain is sacrifice. Because ordinarily, every human being is selfish. Every. However godly that person is selfish. And when the Bible says, love your neighbor as yourself, it's teaching you that, look, how you think good about yourself, you think good about your neighbor. How you want to see the best of yourself, you think the best of your neighbor. And that's what sacrifice. So when you start doing that, you are sacrificing those things that ordinarily you think, it's me, it's mine, it's ours, to say, no, let it be for all of us. And so when we sacrifice for sustainable peace, we deny ourselves those things that ordinarily would have loved to do. Okay, I want to say something, but if I say it, it will cause bigger havoc. So why don't I just leave it? Oh, I want to do something. If I do it, it will create more trouble. Why don't I stop doing it? So you now have a boundary. And those boundaries guide you. And why the boundary? Because you respect the other person. You think the other person has a place. So you have to sacrifice. And for those who talk about law, says that your right stops where the right of others starts. And it takes sacrifice for you to acknowledge that truth. That yes, you have a right, but others too have a right. And then when you respect them, they respect you. The society becomes peaceful. Everybody have a voice. Everybody have a space. And in your space, in my space, in our space, we begin to change our society, and all of us are happy. You are happy, I'm happy, because we all made sacrifices. And I was happy when he said and talked about those people, beginning with those of you working in the NTA and other media. And when he mentioned the medical group, I was so impressed. Many times we don't know the sacrifice people are doing for us to be happy. Look at some of these policemen. Look at some of the army. Do you think that is because we pay them? No, they could have chosen to do another job. They make sacrifice and we sleep. When everybody does that, our nation, our community, everywhere, will be a better place.
But the problem is, will everybody do that? Because I was going to ask if one person's sacrifice could do so much, or it's a value that all of us may have to imbibe. Ustaz Muhammad.
When the Quran speaks about sacrifice, clearly it says, they prefer others to themselves even when they are in need. That is the greatest thing that what you are giving to another person, whatever it is, it may be any means of sustenance. It may be a parking space in a very busy area. The Quran also speaks about even seating arrangement. If you provide accommodation to another person in a crowded place, that is sacrifice. And in a number of places to attune for anything, you are told to be considerate to the other person. Look at the clothing need, the feeding aspect, anything that will make another person comfortable, even where you are in need of what you are given, is part of sacrifice. If we put that into perspective, and I think that will not stop to individual or everyday people, even politicians. If you look at this position I'm trying to vie for, how will it affect my community? How will it affect my constituents? How will it affect my state? How will it affect the country? Must I participate this year, or I should allow for some other years? Let another person who has not come to the National Assembly, for example, who has not come to the government house. My Reverend has been very close to the so please let us be considerate.
All right, Mr. Let me also start with you now. So we'll just go anti-clockwise now. There's somewhere a verse in the Quran that says it is not the flesh nor blood that reaches Allah, but it is the piety.
Yes.
I just wanted to relate this to how that aligns with our moral and spiritual obligations to promote peace.
Whatever you do, that was, the verse speaks about the Hajj sacrifices, the sacrificial animals that we do. When you slaughter the animal, do not assume that slaughtering it benefits Allah in any way. No. The blood or the meat does not is nothing but the piety with which that sacrifice was.
But it doesn't just relate to the animals. It also relates to your dealings with other people.
Of course, because the immediate beneficiaries of that sacrifice will be the poor around the places where that sacrifice is made. Also, the Quran says, you will not attain unto piety until you spend out of that which you love. So, in spite of the fact that you need and you like this, when you give to others, it doesn't mean that you do not need what you are giving. If you give what you do not need, then what you intend to throw away, you give to another person. That is not sacrifice. Is what you need out of the best. And the companions around him then chose the choicest of what they love, and they gave it to others, just to attain to piety and to attain to Allah's acceptance. That applies to whatever we do. It doesn't mean that if I allow another person to use something that I should have used, I don't like to be there politically and otherwise. Yes, I want to be there, and I'm, for example, the man of the people. They love me, they want me, but another person is there. Let me also be considerate, because there are other things that others will not see, which my appearance now will affect. Let me wait for some other time for national development and peace. Let another person be there.
All right, thank you very much, Ustaz. Since we are going anti-clockwise now, we'll get back to Reverend Hayab. And I remember a lecturer of mine. He didn't go to church, he didn't go to mosque. He had his reasons, but he had very strong values. More than those who probably went to church, who went to mosque. And you begin to wonder, is it possible, even outside of religion, to find those values that rather bind us than divide us, those values that edify society?
Thank you very much for putting that background. To be honest with you, I think sometimes we, on our own, look down at our values, not knowing that we have those very important values even before we knew religion. The value of accommodation, the value of tolerance, loving your brother. And in Africa, we end up these conversations with some adage and said, two brothers can eat without the bright light, showing that there's trust. I don't need to put light to eat with my brother because I believe there's nothing evil he's going to do to me. And when you bring your food to the table or in the market square for us to eat, and people come to eat, do not mean that they don't have food in their homes. It's simply to show that we are together. So we have those values that were there. Religion came to help us improve in those values. But we sometimes just want to condemn what we do. I think it's not faith that teaches me to greet an elder. I grew up in a house to know that every other person that is senior to me is a senior. I should respect him. And my mother's sisters, I didn't learn how to respect them as my aunties because of religion. The fact that English taught me to call them aunties. But in my home, I should call them mama because they are my mother's sisters. Even my mother's younger brother is still also my father. I don't call him uncle. It's English that started teaching me to call him uncle. But in our traditions, we don't even know what is an uncle. He's just a father. And then respect was there. love was there, acceptance was there. So we have those values. And religion comes to further, and sometimes when we teach this, Jesus says he didn't come to set aside the laws, but to fulfill them. Those things we learn about law, when you read the 10 Commandments, when you say thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not do this, no tradition tells you to kill. No tradition tells you to take somebody's wife or take somebody's property. No. So those values are there. And unless we go back to it, and because we have abandoned those values and try to use faith to simplify certain things, and that's where we are today. Because we earlier were discussing when we listened to one of the conversations about the newspaper review of people buying phone, something like that, for Yahoo. And we say, wow, you can see how bad our country is. Because if you grew up, we call a thief a thief. So nobody wants anybody to call any member of your family a thief. 2, if you have a disabled person in your house, you don't even want people to laugh at you that he'll go out and be begging. So you make sacrifice to ensure he feeds, make sacrifice to ensure he goes to school, make sacrifice to ensure things work well. So those were values that we didn't really learn them from faith. But with faith, we're supposed to have improved them. So I want to speak to Nigerians that, look, in every Nigerian culture, with the numbers of tribes we have, with the regions we have, with the different dialects we have, there are values that you associated with your tribe that are, they are universal principles. That's why in our place we talk about universal values, the values that do not change because of identity, because of location. They are human values. And unless we emphasize that, we won't go anywhere. Do you know that people who do not go to church and mosques are more honest than those of us who go to church and mosques? The fact is, no. Yeah, I understand what you mean by some, yes. But let me just clarify quickly, then I stop. The truth is that the sense to be honest and want to ensure that you don't take what belongs to you is enshrined in some of those things we are used than even those of us who claim to go to church and mosques. We're supposed to say yes, yes, and no, no. But in reality, even when we're saying yes and no, we are not honest. So why don't we understand that every human being has something he brings to the table, and he brings it from an understanding of how he was brought up. So when we train our children with those values, then they later go to mosque and church, it becomes super sacrificial and helpful to the society.
Reverend Herb, thank you. And I like that you started with us. So we're going to start with the leadership. Dr. Chogo, I'm just wondering, we say that peace, I mean, Victor and I already talked about it, that peace is not necessarily when, there is absence of conflict or war and all that. In fact, many societies today are in dire need of, peace, and it's a broad concept. But let's look at how, leaders at all levels, beginning with the religious leaders, the political leaders, and all other people at the top who are supposed to be leaders, paving the way. What kind of sacrifice? What's the nature and scope of sacrifice that they can, make to promote, sustainable peace?
Thank you very much. I think that the term sacrifice actually is not a common thing. And we need to make it very clear that it's not an easy thing. An indisciplined man can hardly be a sacrificial person. So sacrifice takes a sense of discipline, a sense of responsibility, a sense of selflessness, a sense of looking at the bigger picture beyond you. Then you have that capacity to begin to make sacrifice. A sacrificial man, a man who is a man of sacrifice, or a woman who is a woman of sacrifice, can't be sleeping in his or her house once it's 6 a.m. That person is already up and doing. So the point I'm trying to connect is to connect capacity for sacrifice and leadership. And that is why leadership does not come easy. Leadership also is not for a lazy person. It's not for an indisciplined person. A leader is a man who is a woman who is willing to make a sacrifice beyond and above the ordinary person. That is why it's a leadership position. So when you look at the triangle of leadership, you look at the followers, the down is filled with people, and at the top, it's a very narrow people. So it is those who can endure, persevere, who have the tenacity and the consistency and persistence, to excel at individual level, and then translate that into community, family level, as well as community and national level. They have a much more broader picture. So that is why leaders must be up and doing in terms of making sacrifice. sacrifice in terms of timeliness, punctuality, sincerity, openness, transparency, accountability, and that zeal to excel. And so once leadership have it, either in family, you see it grow, in organizations, you see the organization to making a world of impact and difference, in nation states, so you begin to see it going. And that level of leadership sacrifice also will have to infect even the people. Because people copycat. Once people see that their father or their mother is disciplined and all that, you see the children begin to align too. The same thing in an organization. Once they see that the leadership is a no-nonsense person, is a very serious person and all that, the people in the organization to begin to sit up, and all that. So it has to cut across different sectors of our life, in terms of our capacity to make sacrifice for each other, for our organization, and for our nation. We have to be very deliberate and intentional about it. And like I said, sacrifice is not just a common thing. It's not an easy thing. It's something that you press yourself, you squeeze yourself to bring out the juice in you. So you must be willing, to make that sacrifice. That is why I think, like Imam said, that it is sacrifice is not something you do from a comfort zone. Yeah. You do it from a point of self-pain, for wider gain. So you must be willing, as a leader, to do that. And I think that if I need to speak on a more national space right now, what we're going through, the removal of this fuel subsidy was not an easy decision.
I was going to come to that.
Yes, I think I need to make it a bit clear.
Sometimes.
It is not an easy decision for any leader to take. And there is no leader, that joy in the pain of its people. I think we need to make that very clear. But we're at a crossroad where that decision needs to be taken. And I think that is where leadership comes in. And we can see the level of gains in terms of the revenue profile, for the government of Nigeria, in terms of what the removal of subsidy have done and the leakages that has blocked. And I think that the blocking of leakages is a continuous process to which the government has committed itself to do. Also, the floating of the foreign currency, to cut off people who were ripping, unnecessarily from the system, and all that. And then the capacity also for the system to continue in spite of all those failures, in the past, to see how we make it. And the reason why I'm saying this is that we, as a people, as a nation, we're already making sacrifices, very big, huge sacrifices at individual level and at national level on these two key issues of subsidy removal and the foreign exchange floating. What that means is that we must now begin to build trust and confidence, on the part of the leadership to ensure that the sacrifices that we are making is not in vain. And I need to say this because of the level of politicization, by political elites to undermine some of these sacrifices that we are making. And I think that I need to make this very clear also that in the build-up to the last election, all the candidates were on the same page in terms of subsidy removal on the issue of forex. But now we are seeing a campaign. We are seeing a campaign of people telling us certain things, and they are not providing alternative to these policies, that are on ground. And we can see the level of disenchantment. If you go to the X platform, for example, and you see what some Nigerians are saying, and I call them paid hirelings, because if I'm opposing a policy, I should be in a better position to provide an alternative policy. Because first and foremost, after elections, we all become citizens. The government becomes government of everyone. So all we need to do as enlightened and good citizens is to support the government of the day to achieve what they say they want to achieve, so that we don't have to suffer twice. That's the truth. So we believe in the leadership to take us through this tunnel of darkness into the light that they say we will see. And we'll wait for that light to see. So when we don't see that light, then we can begin to castigate. But here we are just midway, and already we are being stampeded. And I think that is not too good for any nation, for us to build a nation that we desire.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Uchogu. Taking off from where you ended, let me head to Kano to join Dr. Salim Omali. And I'm wondering, would you say that leadership in Nigeria generally, speaking now, hasn't made enough sacrifices, because the picture I get is that with sacrifices we could move mountains, we could achieve anything. So could it be the case that the leadership, broadly speaking, hasn't made certain required sacrifices, or is it the people, the followers, that haven't done it? Where did we need, or do we need to plug gaps?
Okay, thank you very much. I'll just take a minute or so just to speak on some of the key other important issues that have just been mentioned. I think the first one is the universality of values, which Reverend Hayab just spoke about. And this universality of values, they are embedded in the religions, they are embedded in the faiths. In my little understanding, I'm not a scholar as them. So what they said is absolutely correct. These values, these universal values, are not just religious values, but they are fundamental human values that are embedded in humanity, and which you find them very central to all the religions of the world. Now, if you look at the African society, there is this concept which we call the Ubuntu. The Ubuntu is an indigenous African concept where communities, individuals do not compete, they cooperate. So generally the approach of Africans to many issues is cooperative rather than competitive. It is the recent economic developments or economic models that brought in the issue of competition, and which we took it beyond what it is at the industrial or manufacturing level, and then we brought it even into any other issue of our society. And I think it has not helped African societies enough, because we are not that much industrialized like some other countries. So this concept of cooperation, sacrifice, and cooperating together. For example, in my community, it is always said that if you are the richest in your community and all your neighbors, like Ustaz Sadiq just said, if all your neighbors are poor and you are the richest, then you are a laughing stock among your community in any typical African society. Because the expectation is that once you amass wealth, that your personal wealth should become a communal wealth, which you should deploy to build up and strengthen your entire community. So once you are a wealthy community, then that is your pride. It's the pride of everybody that all the community members within his society work together. And that is why in any typical African society, when you go to agriculture, you find the young people doing, I don't know what it's called, gaya in Hausa language. And you hear a lot of people being called gaya, gaya, gaya. It is from that concept of cooperating, working together to farm for everybody. So if in this rainy season I'm sick, my sickness will in no way affect my yield for that year, because all my community members will cooperate to cultivate crops for myself. If I am sick, all my animals will be taken care of by my relatives, by people around me. So nobody is at a loss at any point in time because of this concept. Now, coming back to the issue of leadership and the level of sacrifice between the led and the leader, I think in Nigeria today, just like Dr. Joseph earlier mentioned, it's a big challenge. And this challenge is not just about the leadership or the followership, but I will go back again to Reverend Hayab. It is a problem of values. It's a problem of orientation. What I do, what I say, and what I fail to do is not necessarily my own thinking, but how I am brought up. The kind of values that were embedded in me, the kind of upbringing that I have, the kind of societies and peers that I relate and and work with in everyday life. There are societies where you cannot steal, not because you don't want to steal, but because there is no room even for you to steal. There are some societies where you cannot act in a certain way, not because you don't want to act in that way, but because the larger society have no room for you to act in that way. And I think this is the foundation of the religions, and this is why religions set up structures and values. This is why societies set up structures and values that will control. So overall for me, like I always say, we have to go back to our education system. We have to go back to our family system. And we have to go back to the way we do things in our various bureaucracies in such a way that the system of accountability that used to be there, where every personnel within the civil service, within the bureaucracy, has a role, and that role is sacrosanct, and no director can undermine that, no commissioner can undermine that, no governor can undermine that. If we go back to those basics, I think we will find a very perfect society and a perfect leadership. So it's the entire system, not just the not just the followership, but where we miss it all is in organizing our society and creating these right values.
Thank you, Dr. Mamale. Thank you very much, as always. And we also need to go back to our religious leaders, because that's where I'm taking my question to. Because, Ustaz, I'm just wondering, you know, the concept of sacrifice that is taught in, you know, our churches and in our mosques, and how that, you know, help to guide, you know, the believer in promoting peace.
I will comment on this and on leadership. Reverend has mentioned, and also Doctor, the issue of Ubuntu. Even before religion, we had our morals, our what we
values.
The Prophet said, "I am sent to perfect right conduct." So there were conducts that were right, but he has come to perfect them. That's very important. On leadership, that all we have been talking about. I hope I will be permitted in the national television to speak about the persona of the First Lady, and I want us to look at that with all reverence and respect, and to put it in this perspective. When she assumed leadership as the mother of the nation, even her dressing now depicted that motherhood. The dressing, when a Muslim looks at her, he sees a mother, because she dresses just like his mother would dress in the house. When a Christian looks at her, he feels that it's so subtle that others have not, but she has changed completely. I had a committee in the National Mosque that receives donations from people and disperses to the poor. The First Lady has sent us more than 3,000 different items to be given to the poor. The first consignment was 1,000 bags of rice, followed by another 1,500 cartons of assorted food items from the office of the president through the office of the First Lady. And she sends cows, and the last one, just yesterday, another 1,000 consignment of assorted food items to be given to the poor. This is a very big lesson in leadership. We have had First Ladies before her, and Reverend from Kaduna has seen First Ladies at the state level. But really, we have not seen anything like what the First Lady is doing. They have done their own, but this system, this assumption of motherhood to the nation, and looking at every facet of society, not only to the National Mosque, but to all mosques around the country, she has been sending these food items. We have never seen this before. And this is a message to First Ladies past and First Ladies to come, that as a mother of a state and as a mother of a nation, you are, as that name, that appellation depicts, you are a mother, you must treat all as your children. That is very important.
Is that leadership to be emulated?
Of course, that's what I said. That people in leadership position have a lot to learn from Senator Oluremi Tinubu. Assumption of motherhood to all. Yes.
So let's talk about the teaching of sacrifice in churches and mosques, and how that helps to mold, the perception of the believer and his duty, to promote peace.
As I was saying the other time I spoke, everything Islam teaches is to look at the other person. Everything. In Ramadan, we are to feed the fasting Muslim. We're encouraged that we will have double reward. His reward and ours, without diminishing anything from his own reward. And it's not speaking only to leaders, that everybody has something to give. Even half a date is something. Don't say, what, since it is sacrifice, I do not have anything. What you have, out of what you have, is what you will give. Everyone according to his situation, everyone according to his circumstances. The rich according to what they can do, the straitened according to what they can do. So nobody is spared, nobody is immune. Everybody is part of that sacrifice. You must do something, because however much you think you do not have, God has given you something that he has not given another person.
All right.
So, sorry, I still want to, I want to stretch it a bit, because there are some believers, in Islam, who feel that sacrifice, taking their lives and killing other people, is also, a sacrifice, done for God. Is that?
They are not believers. They are delusional people. They are mad people. They need a psychiatrist, not an NTA program. They are not. Yes, they are not representing the religion. They are not representing any faith. And every scripture on earth could be used by miscreants to achieve an end. Because a verse that speaks about something else, like the verse he started with, he said, until you give your life to your, or either kill yourself for your neighbor. But that is metaphorical.
Yes, because I was also going to come to him.
Yes, that's metaphorical. Is to do the best for others. That's all. Yes. We can talk about.
I don't think the Bible also means what you say, laying your life.
No.
Yes.
When
Yes.
I talked about
Yes,
laying
because we
your
need to-
life for others, I'm talking about making sacrifice for the good of others, not killing yourself or killing others, but making sacrifice. Because I did explain that every human being have this tendency of being selfish. So when you are consciously aware that you could take this, but for others, I'm not going to take it. You've laid down your interest for the interest of others. And since the essence is to connect spirituality, or what the Bible or the religious teaches as far as sacrifice is concerned, throughout history and throughout scripture, you see the life of sacrifice. The fact about it is that the apostle will say that if you go to someone who is in need and you just say to him, go and it is well, without offering a direct help, and you are in position, you've not done anything. So even when we pray, we are sacrificing. When we seek to help, and I just like the examples he cited, and I wanted to add this. In the last 2 years, I find myself interested in what happens in Ramadan through the Al-Habibiyah mosques. This year I was there. I felt, sir, if I have no food to offer here, I have my time to offer. They allow me to go to the mosques, and the almost 2,500, 2,800 that particular day, I was passing food for them. What are we talking about? There are things we do that they themselves are sacrifice. There is a concept that is national that we seems not to talk about, volunteerism. In this country, everybody wants to do a job that he gets paid. Nobody wants to do anything that will just make somebody happy and have some sense of fulfillment that you've done it. The other day we went to Al-Babia Mosque. They said something that really interests me. They said the food we cooked today, an archbishop provided it. Things are happening in our country. It's just that we're not amplifying them out there. So opportunities like this for people to know that this sacrifice we are talking about is what you can do, I can do, every one of us can do. And you ask whether it's a person or it starts from me. When I do it, then it will translate to another person doing it. I had my time last year in Habibia Mosque with one Reverend Father who came from the US, and I just enjoyed that time. I said, wait a minute, they are not serving food to only Muslims. They are serving food to everyone in need. And the other lesson is they are so organized that within 15 minutes, we've already shared food to 2,800 people. We didn't feel any pains. We keep learning every day among ourselves. We keep seeing what all of us can do to make this country better. So if I now feel, oh, I'm a Christian, I'm not going to learn, I'm not going to do anything there, I wouldn't have said what I've just said now. But I'm a Christian. I walk to the mosque. I actually dress like this. And I had my time. And I enjoy my time. And the young men would just look at me in my castle. Hey, you're the one giving us food. Thank you, sir. I went home for feel. And I look forward to an opportunity to do the same. I went back to Kaduna and I said, wait, if I come here to do this in Arabia Mosque, what am I doing in Kaduna? I called the JNI leader. I called the cooker center. I said, hey, let's go further than this. We're not going to cook the food. Can we just select families and package food and give them? We are Christians. Let's also do that. We did that. So what we are learning every day is there are things we must learn or keep doing as our small sacrifice to change first what you're talking about, the mindset of Nigeria. Let Nigerians know that someone loves me beyond religious line. Someone cares for me beyond regional line. Someone can do things for me beyond all those identities that we talk about. Itself is sacrifice. Have you noticed the sacrifice local Nigerians do for the progress, for the peace of Nigeria? We do drive every day in our roads. I wake up sometime very early in the morning and I see women, mothers, who come out. You may think they are being paid, but that sacrifice is huge. Cleaning the road, trying to remove anything that could cause us danger when we come out later. And you think they've done nothing? Without them, our cities will look dirty. Our roads will not be clean enough. So when we begin to appreciate those tiny things, and everybody realizes that that thing I'm doing is worth it, it's appreciated, then people will be motivated to be doing their own. We cannot all be managers. We can not all be senators. We cannot all be president or governors. You are governor of cleaning the road. You are governor of ensuring certain things are done. So those tiny sacrifices put together transform a nation, and then you can now turn Nigeria into either Dubai or into America, because others do the same thing there to make those countries what you are seeing.
Just one point before the next question, to add to what the Reverend has said. Following in the First Lady's example and in line with what he has said, a Christian donor has given the National Mosque 40 bags of rice, 1 bag of millet, and 1 carton of cooking oil. A Christian donor to the National Mosque.
Okay. Dr. Chogu, given the cost of sacrifice, the cost of making sacrifices, sometimes personal losses, how can people stay motivated to keep sacrificing in a society like ours?
I think that each and every one of us will be remembered for the sacrifices that we've made, because life is transient. Leadership is transient. Our body here has a terminating point. So we can only be remembered for the sacrifices we make. At the home level, the very good sacrifices we're able to make for our family, the pains we go through, to pay school fees, the pains we go through to try to discipline, shape a child, keeps your memory in the heart of that child, even when that child is an adult and you are long gone. It's the same thing also in different organizations. The sacrifices that leaders are able to make in their respective organizations, irrespective of the leadership cadre, is what keeps your memory alive when you are gone, either out of office or you are gone to eternity. So, and that is why sacrifice is very, very important for leaders. Once you're on that curve as a leader making sacrifice, you know that you are not selfish. Whatever decisions you are taking, is for the good of all, for the good of the people. That is how the people are going to remember you. If you are a leader and your leadership is selfish, as you are going, the people forget you immediately. And it's applicable, to all stratas of society, either at national, sub-national level, at the community level. So sacrifice is something that it's of pain. You are supposed to make gain here, but you say, no, you are not going to make gain here. You are sacrificing it for all. So people will remember that act that you do. And I think that leaders have to be very, very intentional and deliberate. Because at times, in position of leadership, if you are not fortunate enough, you are encircled by people who have so much of personal interest, and they blow you from seeing the bigger picture of what you need to do. And it is those same people who are closer within your corridor that will be the first to criticize you once you are out of office. That is why leaders must go beyond their comfort zone to have a very ground understanding of what is happening in their respective organization, in their community, to take certain decisions for the good of all. And I think that is very, very important because, like I said, sacrifice leads to posterity. When you make sacrifice, posterity remembers you. When you don't make sacrifice, posterity easily forgets you. So I think that is very important, to try to make that.
Okay, let's bring in Dr. Momale. Dr. Momale, I know you've had to mediate, between warring communities, warring people, and many communities today are either in conflict or experiencing one crisis or the other. I'm just wondering if you can share with us maybe a very difficult sacrifice that you've had to make in trying to resolve any particular conflict.
Okay, thank you very much once again. And thank you to all the other discussants for some of the very brilliant contributions they have made. But if you take the bigger picture, the larger picture, just like Dr. Joseph mentioned, I think there is really any negative cost in sacrifice. There is always joy. There is always happiness. Just like Ustaz Sadiq and Reverend Hayab mentioned, at the end of every sacrifice, it's a personal joy. It's a personal fulfillment. When you look at people that you did something very small, like he said, just going there you're not the one that buy the food. You have not contributed any money. Possibly you just came even to do other things, but you just saw people doing something. You stop over and you help in the distribution of that food. By passing over a meal to somebody who is hungry, the joy in his face will continue to linger in your mind for a very long time. There was a story of a philanthropist who was distributing these wheelchairs to some needy cripples. And when he went and he was distributing, he was there personally one of the times. And one of the beggars, one of the disabled persons said, "Please come, I want to talk to you personally." Then he said he went closer to him. He agreed to go closer to him, just like Joseph said, looking beyond those, the big people who don't want him to interface with them. Then he spoke to him because he brought down his head close, trying to listen to what that boy will tell him. Then he said, "Sir, I call you to come here so that I can look at your face very well, so that on the day of judgment, when I see you in paradise, I will remember you." He said of all the things he did in his life, that was one of the touching moments of his life. So this is the beauty of sacrifice. There is no pain, really. There is no negative cost to sacrifice. Coming back to the work that many of us, myself, Joseph, Reverend Hayab, are all doing in the peace building space. It is really a sacrifice of a single person like myself, but a sacrifice of multitude of people that enable us to succeed. I have never, throughout my career in peace building, assigned or said any one success. I attach that success to myself or to my efforts, but to the efforts of those that did more than myself. Our local community leaders, comprising our village heads, our ward heads, our religious leaders at that local level, the imams, the pastors, the bishops in our various local communities, those young people, those agile women that spend sleepless nights trying to orient their young people, trying to stop one thing or the other. All the successes we have recorded is because of them. Our traditional institutions, our religious leaders, and some of even our local government, local civil servants in the public sector who do a lot of things behind the scene. These are the people that make enormous sacrifices. Sometimes when I visit certain communities, and I tell people that I have went to location A, B, and C, they will ask me, you are Fulani? Said yes. And you are able to tell me that you visited this area, you are lying. You can't, because they will kill you. Any person they see of your extraction, they will kill you. Or I go to other places where they will, with other of my colleagues who are in court of the other ethnic identity, and we go there and he comes back and he said he was there, they will say you are lying, you can't there because they will kill you. It's not true. It's the communities, it's the people that make that possible. But like the earlier said, your leadership style, your openness, the sincerity of your mind will enable people to listen to you, to respect you, and to give you all the dignity and honor that you deserve. The way you present yourself, the way you address yourself, it's really the bottom line. And this is a challenge for leaders, and this is a challenge for leadership. For example, now, when I left the commission recently, one of the nights I said, today I can comfortably off my phone, and I can put it in silent from 10 or 11. If I wish, I won't answer any phone call. When I was in the leadership of the Kaduna State Peace Commission, for 24 hours, my phone is by my side, because I don't know what the next call means. If you call me and I'm in a meeting, if I know your number and I see your name, I may decide not to answer the call. But if I see a number without any name, I'm obliged to answer that call immediately, because I don't know who is calling. I don't know under what circumstance he is. I don't know the type of assistance he needs. If I answer the call and I hear him greeting me, I'll say, okay, sorry, I will call you later, because I don't know, maybe he's calling me for an emergency. So this is a responsibility of leadership. When you are in certain leadership positions, you have to sacrifice everything for those people you are leading. And that is fundamental. So there are many instances throughout Kaduna State, across the country, in the work that we have been doing. All those in the peace building space, all those our traditional and religious leaders, they have the credit for what is happening in this country. And I think the more we amplify these positive voices, these positive events like they are describing, what is happening, this increased collaboration among our faith-based communities, this cooperation with our political and religious leaders and our traditional leaders, I think the barriers, we need to close them. We need to close the barrier between the political leaders, the bureaucrats, the religious leaders, our teachers, and our other education communities, our media. We all need to close the spaces and work together as a team to address the current challenges before our country.
All right, Dr. Salim Omale, thank you very much. I'd like to go into another sphere of this conversation, perhaps looking at how we can strike a balance, but we've got to take a break at this point so that when we return, the conversation continues. Please do stay with us. All right, thank you for staying with us. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA, and we've been discussing sacrificing for national development for peace. So let me get back to Ustaz Muhammad at this time. And I'm wondering, can sacrifice ever be too much? Is there a point where you have to, strike a balance and say, look, to avoid a burnout? Can sacrifice be too much?
Sacrifice can never be too much. Because as he has said, you have to go out of your comfort zone. It is inconveniencing to sacrifice, but you have to. In the books, we learned about an expedition where they were in the desert and there was no water. And the little water they could find could not go round. Whoever was given sacrificed for the other person. Like that, and nobody was able to even take. So sacrifice was there. Look at our situation here. The common man does not see sacrifice in the leaders. He doesn't see it round. Because the Quran says, let it not be something that is restricted. Wealth should not be restricted to a few. You talk about sacrifice, and the poor man sees affluence. He sees embezzlement. He sees waste. when there is nothing for him. When position, look at lack of sacrifice in the case of Kano, for example. We have 2 emirs. That should send or has sent the wrong message as far as sacrifice is concerned. This is one of the major cities in the north, and you have 2 emirs for the Salah, for the celebrations, for leadership, and so on. That should be corrected. What is happening in Rivers is another question of sacrifice. If the sacrifice is there, there has to be concession for peace to reign, for national development to be achieved. But where everybody would not move an inch, it's really sad. People that will vie and do everything to attain to a position would now say, no, I will not, because he wants to remain loyal, because he wants the embers of the problem to keep burning. I think really, the led should see example from the leaders. These 2 examples have not given a good commentary about our country, about our leadership.
And that's, of course, the zero-sum, game that our politics, have become. And in other areas, in other parts of the country, you're also having some, tension at the moment. We know what has happened in Urume and all that. And I'm just wondering, Reverend Hayab, you've been at this. How can we explore the act of sacrifice in addressing some of these both historical and political grievances?
Yeah, we must, as a matter of principle or coming on with our values, to know that you can't be alone. You need people. I like the example he cited with Rivers. The truth about it is that we must kill the politics of winner's take his own, or the man who is powerful have everything. No. There's always a tomorrow. And whatever you do today, you are doing it for tomorrow. If you are shining today, tomorrow you will not shine. If your voice is loud today, tomorrow your voice will not be loud. I visited someone that we grew, actually he was far my senior as in 1987. He was even a master warrant officer. We were in choir together, we were the younger choristers. But we went to him, we sang, he couldn't talk. He was just looking at us. He's no more shy, I know. And I just reflect back. I reminded them some of the things he used to tell us when he was strong. And I realized that for everything you see today, you won't see it tomorrow. So any action you are taking now, remember there is a tomorrow. We need a country that will grow together, will prosper together. So it's a give and take. Because in sacrifice, you give, you take. In sacrifice, you deny yourself, the other person denies himself. But for the common good of all people, when we allow all the people to suffer and we think we are winning, we are not winning, because a time will come that we will not get it. But let me put it this way. The challenge we faced last week, or early this week, in Orome, teaches us a lot about what is happening in our country. How can our nation, citizens become suspect in their country? I think we have to begin to think that way, because our leaders need to do more to help Nigerians see themselves as one. Because what leads to whatever we're hearing is suspecting one another. For the mere fact you have one identity different from me, I suspect you. On what ground? I talked about earlier about accommodation. In sacrifice, we accommodate. Well, okay, since we are not sure of you, we're going to take you somewhere. We'll keep you for a few days and make some investigation and find out who are you. But when we go further to kill, go further to destroy, there's nothing like that. So, who said this about teaching our children, okay, Mamole, the values we have? So, our local vigilante and others cannot just take the laws into your hands and start killing people. No, we have a value that taking somebody's life is wrong. The Bible story that interests me every time I think of it is when the army of Syria came to arrest Elijah. And when they arrived, Elijah, in the power of God, saw them, and his servant was scared. He said, no, bring them in. And he asked them who they were looking for. They say they're looking for him. He now said, okay, take them to the city, cook a fantastic meal for them to eat. And it was when they were there, their eyes opened to realize that the man who brought them to the city and gave them meal is the man they've actually come to arrest. And the king became furious and said, my master, my father, should we kill them? He said, no, you don't kill anybody God has given into your hands. Feed them and ask them to go. They will go and tell stories. When will we start treating people in such a way that they will go and tell a different story from the bad story they knew? You've talked about changing narratives. How do we change narrative? Until we start caring, until we start protecting, until we start supporting, until we start making sacrifice that will make everybody see us as brothers, as friends, not as enemy. I don't understand why in this country, when you move to another region, they will be suspecting you. That suspicion, we must find a way. And you talk about sensitization. Can we find a better way to sensitize Nigerians to start trusting, believing, and not rush into condemning one another because of the stereotyping, the prejudices that we've had before now? Because those are part of it. Takes sacrifice for you to say, though I think this way, but I will not act that way.
Dr. Chogo, I know some states, started erecting peace-building structures and faith-based, programs and all that. Yeah, how significant, or what should be the bigger role of these structures in inducing the spirit of sacrifice among those in the communities?
Yeah, there is what we call the infrastructure for peace. We have the National Infrastructure for Peace project. So at the national level, you have peace structures and peace agencies, and at sub-national level also, you have sub-national peace-building agencies, which we've been canvassing for the last 15 years. We're happy to say that some states have actually responded in creating their own state-level peace-building agencies, like Dr. Mumali just mentioned the Kaduna State Peace Commission. There is the Plateau State Peace Building Commission. There is the Benue Peace Commission. I think Ebonyi also have started. Anambra also have started. I think Adamawa had they've rebuilt their own again. It was before it went down, but I think they started again. So the point we're trying to make is that we need to amplify the voice of peace where there seems to be an entrenched culture of violence. We need to cascade this thing down to respective community level and then reinforce the peace structures that are existing at the respective local government and community level. And I think that I want to use this opportunity to mention that government, is the first line of conflict management, conflict resolution, and then conflict prevention. At the national level, these structures are there. They're working at the state level to a very large extent. But at the local government level, it's weak. And it's in the local government level the people are. And the local government is supposed to be the front line, for conflict prevention, conflict management, and conflict resolution. And local governments are weak. And that is why I want to appeal to all Nigerians, particularly state governors, to support the judgment of the Supreme Court that allow for local government autonomy, to exist. You see, if these local governments are not working, if they are not there, the place will be vacuous. It will be empty in terms of the presence, of government, to provide some of the basic things that can help resolve some of these things we are talking about. If we talk about Urumi, for example, the distance between Urumi and the state capital is much. So if you find, and there are different towns, cities, local governments, 774 local governments across this country, where the presence, of these structures of governance is not there. The police stations in some of those places, they are weak. So we need to begin to see how we empower the local governments, to carry out the basic function which the constitutions allow them to provide. That is the first front line, in terms of sensitizing the people, getting the people to a sense of ownership, the sense of enlightenment, and whatever policing, that we have. It is the failure of all the system that makes us to begin to turn towards vigilantism, hunters to provide our securities and all that. That's not it. We have a policing system, a policing structure. We have the DSS, we have the prison services. We have all the state paraphernalias, that have to provide for our constitutional provisions. We need to expound on some of these structures in terms of policing, to ensure that these so-called ungoverned spaces where we have free-for-all, hunters are there, forest people are there, these ones are there, everybody playing security actors. You know, in a modern state, it doesn't happen that way. So we must allow...
Did you deliberately leave out the traditional institutions?
No, traditional, that's why I said they are pillars. They are also infrastructures of peace. You heard one of our colleagues when he was saying, I mean, Momole said it there, that these local leaders, we work with them, you know, at the respective local community level. You can't go to a community, for example, without looking at the traditional rulers, which is very key. And sadly, there is no constitutional role for them. So they are just there as titulars. There are local communities where you go, youths don't even listen to them these days again. And I think that we need a sense of urgency to quickly address some of the deficits in our local community levels, you know, for us to empower them, you know, to ensure that they're able to work. We have the religious institutions. In areas, you can't go to certain places. We don't do program, for example, without inviting CAN GNI, you know, the women wing, the Form 1, as well as the youth wing, you know, for GNI, as well as so we bring in all the stakeholders, as well as youth leaders at the respective community levels and all that. It is very, very important that will build peace at the various community level in this country. If we don't, we just focus at the national, at the state, and the local government is empty, then our efforts, you know, will continue to go through that cycle of violence and all that.
All right, thank you, Dr. Chogu. As we begin to round off this conversation, let me quickly get to Dr. Momale again. I just want to find out what your vision of a peaceful and harmonious Nigeria is, and how you think that as a people, cutting across religion, cutting across ethnic groups, can work together to achieve this.
Thank you so much. I think this is what is essential for Nigeria, and this is what Nigerian leadership must prioritize. Nothing happens in the absence of peace and social harmony. All the infrastructure we are talking about, all the reforms, all the industries, nothing can work in this country if we do not have peace. So therefore, we must work on the infrastructure for peace. At the national level, we need the National Assembly, the Presidency, and the Federal Executive Council to recognize that building peaceful coexistence in Nigeria should not be a secondary priority, but it must be the first priority. And we also want them to recognize that what we are facing in this country is not only about criminality, either in form of banditry, in forms of kidnapping of people for ransom, armed robberies, insurgencies. It's not only about those. There is also a social crisis among our young populations, a social crisis in the rural landscape, which in the few past decades was very stable and peaceful. But today our rural environments are facing social crisis. There is also social crisis in the urban areas, the major towns, be them local government headquarters, be them state headquarters, and other major commercial centers. There is also social crisis. And what happens in Uromi is just one of the reflections or one of the outcomes of social crisis that we are facing in this country. And we need to recognize that at the federal level. The state governments have to wake up to this responsibility. Like Dr. Joseph said, many states are coming on board to put up infrastructure for peace, but there are very few. We congratulate Adamawa State, which has just recently created its own peace-building agency. Imo has already done that. We urge many other states to join. The states in the South-South, the states in the Southeast, the states in the Northwest really, really need to come up very aggressively with peace-building programs and peace-building interventions. It is not just about doing one ad hoc thing today or tomorrow, but it's about a consistent, well-coordinated and coherent intervention mechanism that is national, state, and local and community based.
All right, Dr. Momali, thank you. Let me just quickly, in 60 seconds, take the baton to Ustaz and Reverend Hayab. We've seen some recommendations, a sense of urgency to address the lapses at that third tier of government, and then, of course, constitutional rule for traditional rulers. Any more institutional reforms?
Well, I think the traditional rulers also that he has mentioned,
yes.
We need to have a role for them in the constitution because every peace effort without them is incomplete. And I think that's why you said, are you deliberately leaving them out?
What role do you propose?
Well, the role that they have been playing, let it be recognized by the constitution.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's, Reverend Hayab.
Yeah, apart from their role being recognized
Religious leaders?
by the Constitution, religious leaders do not really need a constitutional mandate because constitutionally, as citizens, they have a role in their religious places. When you look at the registration with Karma of all religious institutions, part of the objectives they give is helping to promote social cohesion. So their voices should be amplified. And I want to repeat that. I think so many things are happening good in this country, but the institution that's supposed to amplify it is not doing it enough. So that young Nigerians will know, so you mean there are good things been happening here. So the National Orientation Agency has additional tasks to ensure that those tiny stories of good things happening in Nigeria, I don't know whether I'll call it NTA, becomes the story Nigerians will hear. Because if they read social media and hear 10 bad stories, there should be 1, 2 other good stories that they will read, and it can change all the negative things. But once every day they just see bad, and they don't know where there is good. They even assume there is no good thing happening at all. So they just say, well, let me join them, because the evil going on today in Nigeria started as, oh, if bandits are stealing people and getting money, then let me also just do the same, because I don't hear about the arrest.
All right, Reverend John Joseph Hayab, Chairman, Christian Association of Nigeria, Northern Chapter. We thank you very much for your time and for your perspectives. Reverend Hayab is also Country Director, Global Peace Foundation, Nigeria. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Let me also thank Dr. Joseph Ochogu, Director General, Institute of Peace and Conflict Resolution. As always, we appreciate your contributions to the program. Let me also thank Ustaz Abubakar Siddiq Muhammad, an Islamic scholar with the National Mosque, a private Hajj operator as well. We thank you for your time and for your perspectives. And finally, but by no means the least, from our Kadu studio, we had Dr. Salim Omale, former Executive Vice Chairman, Kaduna State Peace Commission. We thank you so very much for finding time to join us, and we wish you happy celebration. So that's been Good Morning Nigeria for today.
And I'd just like to amplify the appreciation to all our guests. It's been a very robust conversation, and your recommendations are also very, very insightful. I am Claire Adelabu Abdurrazak. I'll see you tomorrow. Baraka de Salah once again.
And I am Victor Azu. See you next time.